Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, September the 19th. It's 5:30. I am going to convene our second budget public hearing, and I would ask that everyone join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please join us in a moment of silence as we remember all the brave men and women of our United States military that serve us here and abroad, and of course our local law enforcement officers and first responders that keep us safe and serve us every day.
And I just add to that tomorrow is POW and MIA Recognition Day.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, thank you. The Flagler County Board of County Commissioners convenes this public hearing on the Flagler County fiscal year 2019-2020 final millage rates and final budget as required by Florida statutes, chapters 129 and 200. We will take a number of actions related to the adoption of the final millage rates and budgets for the fiscal year 2020, beginning with an overview of tonight's proceedings by our Financial Services Director, Mr. John Brower. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the honor of standing before you tonight to present the culmination of months of hard work by staff at all levels of our organization, but none more so than your budget team. It's due to the professionalism and commitment to duty exemplified by Lacey Martin, Kelly Spence, Lauren Shank, and Brian Eichinger that kept us on track during this year's budget process despite numerous out-of-the-ordinary distractions, leadership turnover, including their own director, and a hurricane that threatened our county in a lot of ways, including almost delaying implementation of the budget we hope to adopt tonight. I couldn't ask to work with a better group of professionals. As with the first public hearing, Florida statutes, I just want to remind you that Florida statutes are very specific on the requirements for how a county adopts a budget. And to ensure that we do everything the right way and in the right order, we do have a script for tonight. So just bear with me as we read through a little bit longer script than last time. Mr. Chair, in 1980, the Florida legislature adopted what is known as the Truth in Millage legislation, or TRIM as it's called. The goal of the legislation is to ensure that taxpayers are advised of the public hearings at which the local taxing authorities' millage rates and budgets are considered and adopted. Each year, the property appraiser completes an assessment of the value of all property and certifies to each taxing authority the taxable value of the property within its jurisdiction. Each taxing authority then notifies the property appraiser of its proposed millage rate, its rolled back rate, and the date, time, and place of the public hearing to consider the proposed millage rate and the tentative budget. Once the property appraiser receives the information, he sends a notice that includes all the referenced information by first-class mail to each taxpayer on the assessment roll. This notice, called the TRIM notice, also lists the taxes for the prior year, what the taxes will be if the proposed millage rate changes are made, what the taxes will be if no millage changes are made, and all voted levies for debt service. The motive is to provide taxpayers with sufficient information to enable them to participate in the public hearing process. The purpose of this, the second of two public hearings, is to adopt the final millage rates and budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020. It was properly advertised within the Daytona Beach News Journal on Saturday, September 14th, 2019. Mr. Chair, one of the requirements of the Truth in Millage legislation is to provide information about why the final millage rates differ from the rolled back rates. The rolled back millage rate is defined as the millage rate which, exclusive of new construction, additions to structures, deletions, and property added due to geographic boundary changes, will provide the same ad valorem tax revenue for each taxing authority as was levied during the prior year. The TRIM process requires that a notice of tax increase be advertised when the current year final aggregate millage rate exceeds the calculated aggregate rolled back millage rate. For fiscal year 2020, the aggregate proposed millage rate, which includes a 0.1250 mil in voter-approved environmentally sensitive land funding, is 8.2547 mils. The aggregate rolled back millage rate for fiscal year 2020 is 7.9059 mils. The proposed millage rate represents an increase of 4.41% from the rolled back rate. The total county final budget for fiscal year 2020 is presented within this agenda's backup as Schedule A. It is equal to the tentative budget adopted by the board during the first public hearing held on September 5th, 2019. The mentioned increase in property tax revenue is necessary to fund the operations, obligations, and mission of the county and our constitutional officers during the 2020 fiscal year. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the final millage rate or final budget at this time.
Commissioners, are there any general questions or comments from the board regarding the final millage rate or the final budget as submitted? And just a reminder, there'll be an opportunity for the board and for the public to discuss each one specifically as the resolutions are presented later in the proceedings. But any general questions right now for the Financial Services Director?
No?
No.
Okay, and we'll move on, sir. So we'll now consider adopting the fiscal year 2020 final millage rates.
Mr. Chair, I present resolution number 2019-56, a resolution of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners to adopt the final millage rates for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020, pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 200 Florida statutes, providing for conflicts and severability and providing for an effective date.
The chair requests a motion to approve resolution 2019-56 to adopt the final millage rate for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt Resolution 2019-56 to adopt the final millage rate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. At this time, I will allow comments from the public regarding the adoption of the final tentative millage rate. Okay, seeing no one approach the podium, we'll close public comment. I will now call the question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion to approve the adopted rate, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. We will now consider adopting the fiscal year 2020 final budget.
Mr. Chair, I present resolution number 2019-57, a resolution of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners to adopt the final budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020, in the total amount of $231,013,508, pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 129 and 200 Florida statutes, providing for conflicts and severability and providing for an effective date.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2019-57, which adopts our final budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll now open this up to public comment. Anyone, at this time, the board would like to invite citizens to comment on the fiscal year 2020 final budget. If any member of the public wishes to discuss or comment on the final budget, please come forward to the podium. All right, seeing no one approach the podium, I will close public comment. And yes?
This one, I just wanted to make sure, I'm sure it's correct. They both are Resolution 2019.
Mr. Chair, that's correct. 2019 is the year, and the
Okay.
the 56 next two numbers are the differing.
Okay, they used to have the
Resolution.
next two numbers up there. Okay.
All right, we have closed public comment. We have a motion and the second. I'll call the question. All those in favor of adoption of the final budget, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. We will now consider a procedural matter related to submittal and reporting requirements.
Mr. Chair, staff requests permission from the board to authorize the county administrator to execute the ministerial documents required to complete the millage rate and budget adoption process.
Commissioners, I'm requesting a motion to grant the county administrator ministerial authorization to execute the documents required to complete the millage rate and budget adoption process.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we authorize the chair of the ministerial documents required to complete the millage rate and budget adoption process.
We have a motion. We have a second on that motion.
Second.
Okay. We don't need public comment on that one, so all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Next, we will move on to consider adopting the classification pay plan for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Mr. Chair, staff requests the board adopt the 2019-2020 classification and pay plan as illustrated in item 5 of the agenda document.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the fiscal year 2019-2020 classification and pay plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on that one. At this time, the board would like to invite citizens to comment on the motion adopting the county's 2019-2020 classification and pay plan. If any member of the public wishes to discuss or comment on this motion, please come forward to the podium. Seeing no one approach the podium, I will close public comment. Bring that back to for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair, the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners has completed the annual budget adoption process for fiscal year 2020. All requirements as mandated by Florida law have been met. Thank you very much.
This concludes the second and final public hearing for the fiscal year 2020 budget, and I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So
Move
moved.
that we adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank
Great
you.
job,
Thank you,
guys.
gentlemen.
Great job.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.